cause I know you're there. Your love did something magical. I put my hands in the air cause you heard my prayer. A transformation radical. I put my hands in the air cause I know you're there. I know it's supernatural.
Hurricane Melissa tested us, but Jamaica rises together. Visit supportjamaica.gov.jm to report damage, request help, or donate. Together, we will rebuild stronger. The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is
5:30 p.m.
All right. Good evening and welcome to everyone on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. This is Family Time. Family Time is about your issues, your family, your relationships. It's about your at-home family, your community family, and your global family. Family Time is produced by Family Life Ministries, and our aim is to enable healthy families, which will lead to healthy nations. So stay with us and please connect with us via all our platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Family Life Ministries FLMJA. And on Instagram, keep up with what's happening at simply FLMJA. While Family Time is a family program, we'd like to caution that it may on odd occasion touch on topics that some may consider to be mature subject matters. Your discretion is advised. I am Crystal Daly Thompson, co-hosting with my friend Amanda. Amanda Wagwan.
I'm doing well, Crystal. I'm doing well, and good to be back on air. So in our last episode, we talked about the fourth trimester, the time after the baby arrives when a mother is recovering physically, adjusting emotionally, and navigating life with a newborn. We heard from clinicians about what often gets missed once families leave the hospital and go home. Today, we're building on that conversation with the fourth trimester when support becomes real, the Father Chronicles.
Yes, so we're going to talk to the fathers. So we're focusing or focused last week really was on afterbirth, what that experience is like. But this time we're adding a father's perspective to explore how support actually plays out at home, how men are socialized to show up during this time, right? Because it's a very sensitive time and what it really means to support mothers after the baby arrives. And as we have that discussion, we'd like the fathers of any age, so all of the fathers them out there, to share something with us. And this is what we wanted to share. We're asking you this question. Before the baby arrived, how did you picture your role in those first weeks at home? And how did that compare to what actually happened? So we wanted to share your experience with us. Send us your answers via WhatsApp text, WhatsApp voice notes to 876-997-3125. Try to keep those voice notes to no longer than 30 seconds. And you can also call our studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328. You can watch us and comment live on the Love 101 FM Facebook and Love 101 FM YouTube. Our conversations are about faith, family, and how we live out our beliefs with love. We'll be right back. This is Family Time.
When love turns toxic and spills into the digital space, it can quickly become abuse, harassment, or cyber stalking. On the next Campus Connection, we shine a spotlight on cyber love gone bad. Join us as Detective Corporal Andre Murray from the Forensic Services Branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, alongside Sherian Grant, UCCF Student Advisor, and Kenneth Roy Clark, UWI UCCF Vice President. Unpack how young people can respond when a former partner uses social media, messaging apps, or public forums to intimidate, shame, or damage reputations. And don't miss our Creative Block segment featuring Joel and Brittany Campbell, owners of Dual Lens Productions, as they share their artistry and vision. Campus Connection is proudly brought to you by the Live Good Anti-Violence Campaign, an initiative of the Ministry of National Security and Peace, Jamaica's partner in advancing progress and building peace. Tune in on Tuesday, February 3 at 5:30 p.m. on Love 101, the family station. Walk on, everybody.
Welcome back to Family Time on Love 101 FM, YouTube, and Facebook. Remember, fathers, no matter how old you are, we need you to answer our question, which is before the baby arrived, how did you picture your role in those first weeks at home? And how did that compare to what actually happened? WhatsApp text and voice notes to 876-997-3125. Try to keep those voice notes to no longer than 30 seconds. And you can also call our studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328. Watch us and comment live on Love 101 FM, Facebook, and YouTube. So who's in the house? Returning, we have Dr. Maya Clark-Kutaya, clinician, inaugural Evelyn Lauder Associate Dean for Nurse Practitioner Programs, and professor at the Hunter Bellevue School of New York CUNY. Health equity advocate, and we also have Dr. Jamil Nactalon Ramos, women's health clinician, assistant professor, School of Nursing, Rutgers University, and advocate. And new to the Family Time family is Delison Charles, behavioral therapist and new dad. So, how is everyone doing?
Good. Happy to be here. Good to see everyone.
Great.
Awesome.
Good to have
Excellent.
you here
So,
too.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. We're happy to have you as well. So, we couldn't go without doing a part two. So, in part one, we talked about how intense and often overlooked the time after the baby arrives can be. So now families understand that. But what really needs to change in day-to-day life at home? We really want to find out what really needs to change. So we have you guys who are the specialists, Dr. Kataya, and we have Dr. Ramos, who was here last time. But now we have a behavioral therapist, Mr. Charles. So we have you here today to help us to unpack this. What happens after the baby arrives? What really needs to change in the day-to-day life at home? Let's start with that. Any one of you could answer that.
Well, I mean, I want to start by saying first that it's good to be in the house here surrounded by wonderful ladies. Thank you for inviting me into the space and thank you for allowing me to lend my voice to the conversation. It's interesting that today happens to be my wedding anniversary, and every time that I have to think about and every time that I have to think about a post, it's interesting that every year my posts the posts get different. And I remember 3 years ago the post was about being so intentional about not letting our son, who was the new one at that time, take over the post because he had taken over all of the pictures. And this time I had to be more intentional because my daughter is just under she's just under 1 year old, and she has become the light of my life. And it's interesting for me in this dad space because I don't think I'm the typical man. I don't think I've had the typical conditioning because I had the opportunities to unlearn some of what has been ingrained into us. But I look forward to lending to the conversation.
Awesome. So what should change when the baby comes home? What really needs to change in day-to-day life in the home space?
Well, first and foremost, what had to change for me was to what now becomes the new normal. I remember, and I know I can speak freely about God. I believe I can speak freely about God. I remember even before getting married, I had asked God to help me understand three main concepts. One was, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a husband? And what does it mean to be a father? And so I knew that the first thing that had to change was my concept of what is normal. I think the immediate changes were understanding that sleep was no longer a regular concept. I don't think in the last 4 years I've been able to enjoy a full night's sleep or a full weekend sleep. So sleep definitely had to change. And I think I had to become more mindful of my wife's experience. I mean, being in the delivery room, I heard about it before theoretically, that it does shift a man's perspective. But for me, having experienced it twice, that really made me more sensitive and more mindful of what my wife went through. And so that had me more prepared psychologically to lend all of the support that I had to when she came home, because we didn't have the regular births. The first one was an emergency C-section. The second one, we were laboring along, but then it stopped along the way. And, in order to save my daughter, we had to do a C-section. And so seeing my wife undergo 2 C-sections back to back, I knew the stress of the first time. And so the second time, I was way more prepared to step in and to step up to the plate and to do what I had to do. So that for me, the first thing that had to shift was my mindset, understanding to be more mindful. Ladies?
Understand. Taya, could you share with us what you would think should change or shift in the home space?
I think that, to his point, there's got to be a shift in the mindset and sort of how roles are seen and outlined and what the expectations are. There is no sleeping, and you are often doing multiple things. And so it is nice to have a partner who understands, okay, you got up the last time, I'm going to get up this time. Maybe I get up with you and get the baby and give the baby to you, so that the experience is shared and there is acknowledgement of how hard it is to be in the postpartum period. And so I think he's absolutely right. Really sort of understanding what your partner's experiencing. Even if you have no clue, fake it and offer as much support as you can, because that, like, this is what a woman does, this is what a man does, this is no longer exists in the world that we're in today. So really trying to share the experience, because then you also miss out on things like bonding with the baby.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we actually have a clip. Thanks for sharing. We actually now have a clip that we'd like to play. So you can proceed now to play that clip for us.
Had the privilege and the experience of going through the process of birth on 3 occasions along with my wife. And in the first case, the first situation, I thought I was well prepared because I had gone with her to all her checks, at the doctors and all of that, and learned all the things that should be done. And how I would take care of the child when the baby was born. The only problem is that the reality is that after the 9 months, our baby came out premature because something had gone wrong on the inside, and she came out as a 7-monther instead of a 9-monther. And she was weighing 3 pounds 13 ounces. It meant that our little baby had to be with the hospital for the first week and again with the 3rd week. And so I really was totally disappointed because I couldn't get to show what I had learned.
Okay, so that's our clip. So indeed, it does give us an idea that sometimes we have unpredictable occurrences, right? Things that we can't always 100% prepare for. However, I do have a question for you, Dr. Amos. What kinds of conversations or preparations you believe parents should have before the actual birth and all of that ahead of time? What do you think are some of the things you should actually discuss?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you guys again. To me,
Yes.
I want to say that I think it's important to actually be granular with the conversation instead of kind of like, we're going to do this as a team. But actually, so for my husband and I said, whatever goes into the baby in terms of feeding, I will be in charge. And whatever comes out of the baby, you will be in charge. And so we just, delegating responsibilities, very concretely, I think really helps with the frustration. And so, when the baby wakes up and I'm trying to breastfeed, that's all what goes in. And if the baby needs to be changed, I'm like, here you go, it's time. we laugh at it now that we're still kind of, with the dog, whatever goes in the dog is my responsibility, whatever goes out is his responsibility. But being able to delegate and actually speaking it out and talking about all the different things that needs to be done, I think is very important ahead of time, so that there's, facilitating the communication.
Definitely, most definitely.
Awesome. So basically, everything you need to work out the logistics, how things will flow in the home. All of that needs to be discussed and agreed upon, of course,
Right.
to alleviate all the unnecessary stress, because you'd be stressed already with everything. So we have a second clip, and we want to go to that clip now to hear what that experience for that person was.
I recall in the fourth trimester when I was having my first child, my wife and I did expect that I would be called on much more, and I intended to show support. What I didn't figure is the extent to which I had to be present. I did perceive that I'd have to support my wife in her recovery and support, the baby. But when it happened, the every 2 hours, participating in feeding, and then the changing of pampers, and sitting up to burp the baby, and those things, sometimes it's you can't fully know until you're there, and that was my experience, but I was prepared to give the support needed at the time.
All right. Thank you so very much for sharing those two questions, or clips, I should say. Those two responses came from Pastor Christopher Broadbent and Donald Stewart.
Yes, and remember, we want to hear from you, fathers. Before the baby arrived, how did you picture your role in those first weeks at home? And how did that compare to what actually happened? We're looking forward to what you have to say. Send your answers via WhatsApp text and voice notes to 876-997-3125. Try to keep those voice notes no longer than 30 seconds. And you can also call our studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328. Watch us and comment live on Love 101 FM, Facebook, and YouTube. And just so you know, the numbers for the FLM head office in Kingston are 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. We'll take a short break now, but when we come back, we'll continue with the fourth trimester, when support becomes real, the Father Chronicles.
Clean hands are good for your health. In the wake of Hurricane Melissa, protecting your health includes a simple act: washing your hands. Use soap and safe water to remove dirt and germs after cleaning, before eating, and after using the toilet. If clean water is limited, use hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol. Remember, clean hands stop the spread of disease and help to keep families safe. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
All right. Welcome back, listeners. You have responded to our special request. Fathers, before the baby arrived, how did you picture your role in those first weeks at home? And how did that compare to what actually happened? We need you to give us a call, send a text, or leave a message. All right, we need to hear from you. Our topic this week, the fourth trimester, when support becomes real, the Father Chronicles. We often hear people say, let me know if you need anything. Is that really helpful though? Because it's really a very trying time. And when I say trying, it's so demanding on the body for the mother. It's overwhelming for family members. There's a new baby, the crying, the need for this, the need for that. There's so much happening. So when people say, come if you need anything, we really need more practical support than that. So we want to delve into that a little bit more. And of course, it's the Father Chronicles. So I'm just going to direct this question to you, Mr. Charles. Let me know if you need anything for the new moms that can feel overwhelming. Why doesn't that kind of support always work after the baby arrives? No, I know I could have directed that to Dr. Kataya or Dr. Ramos, but I need Mr. Charles to kind of give us your perspective, because we want the men to be thinking, We want the men to be thinking and to be working things through with the mother, because she has, she has gone through labor. So what do you have to say about that?
I mean, it's unfortunate that it is so real, that this happens, that this question comes from partners to spouses or from partners to, girlfriends. I hear it too many times, and it's an insult because sometimes it feels very hands off. Sometimes, even when I hear men saying to me, whether in a professional space or otherwise, that they're babysitting their kids, I have to correct that in love to say you can't babysit your own kids. Those are your kids. So what you're doing is that you're parenting. So
Correct.
statements like that, where they say like I'm watching my kids or I'm babysitting my kids, or they say things like I have to stay with my kids, and they make it sound like it's a chore. Those things can really affect our female counterparts, our wives or spouses. It can affect them so much. When in my situation personally, because of my orientation, and I was raised in a very strong maternal, a matriarchal home. My grandmother was a strong woman. My mom only has sisters, so I was raised by my mom and my aunts, and so I always had that empathy towards women. So when my wife and I, when we got married and we came into building a home, I think she herself was so surprised about how, not just how invested I was, but how prepared I was to make a home together. And I said, on top of that, I think because I had asked God to help me prepare to be a husband and a father, I think that the usual messaging or the usual responses that would come from husbands to their wives, the Holy Spirit helped me to check myself on it. So I was very mindful to not say to my wife things like, let me know how I can help you. I would just show up and help, and I think that, from the child birth perspective, being there from the inception, I was present at every single appointment. Thankfully, I know it's not a thing to shame men who were not able to do so. But for me, it was a priority to be there for every single appointment. I wanted to be invested in the process. I wanted to know everything about my children when they were coming along. And then being there for the final hurrah, the crossing of that finish line, to see my wife go through the labor. She had already labored. So when she came home, it wasn't a matter of, let me know how I can help you. It was a matter of me showing up and doing the things, in some cases, untraditionally, doing the things that needed to be done so that she can have a peaceful transition. The fourth trimester is already very difficult. I think it overwhelms some ladies. And for myself, as a new father twice, it was overwhelming for me. Our family dynamic was one such where I was the chief breadwinner already. And so being the chief breadwinner and then stepping into that fathering role, it did take a toll on me, which I think we'll go into more so. But just to come back to the original answer, I couldn't see it in myself to ask my wife, how could I help you? Or let me know how I can help you. I just was observant, I was conscientious, and I showed up and I did what I had to do.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Mr. Charles. So you're pretty much saying that it's necessary to pull on the help of the Holy Spirit and to be attentive to the needs of your partner. Indeed. And I'm just going to quickly add on to that question, though, for your brief response, is how can partners stay actively involved with the baby while still keeping the mother's recovery a priority?
Yeah, and that's a great question too, Mandy, because the mother needs to go through a healing process.
Yes.
I've seen videos online where the fathers are helping the mothers to go to the restroom, ensuring that she eats, holding the baby so that she rests, because she needs to make milk and all of those kinds of things.
Yes,
so
definitely.
we'd want to hear from you on that, and then We'll move on to
Of
our
course.
next question, which we'll direct towards Dr. Ramos.
One of the relationship strategies that we have in my home is that we wear different hats. And so when we became parents, we added the parents' hat to our wardrobe. And so in that parents' hat, we usually sit and we have conversations as it pertains to all of the logistics that surround, the parenting arrangement. And so coming from my own personal set of mindfulness and conscientiousness and spiritual preparation, it was about asking my wife and not assuming, asking her, what do you need? I don't want to assume on your needs. I don't want to treat it as though, this is some sickness, so I don't want to assume on what the limitations can be. I know what the surgery has done, and I know what has been recommended to you, but I also was mindful that she would want to still be able to do things. She would want to be able to get back into her own rhythm. So it was about having that open conversation, very detailed, as Dr. Ramos said, going to the granular, having, those specific conversations. What do you need me to do? What exactly can I help you with? From that perspective, so that the attention could be more specific and it could not just be me shooting in the dark, but me really delivering on exactly what her physical needs would be.
Indeed. So it's important for her responses to, for you to analyze them and ensure that you meet those specific requests, because that makes a difference. That's what you prioritize. Indeed. Thanks for sharing, Mr. Charles.
All right, so we're going to a clip now from Joey Kataya. So it's Dr. Kataya's husband. We're going to hear from him.
Right.
When we had our first child, Elijah, I was totally new to little humans. I was the youngest through my extended family, so I never had any exposure to babies. I had no idea what it required to take care of one. I was just clueless. The constant late-night feedings at all hours, pumping on a 2-hour schedule, diaper changes. You're living on their time. I don't think I initially realized how unhelpful I probably was. It didn't take me too long to recognize that Maya was doing most everything on her own. It was a little easier for me to see it with Genevieve and Evangeline, but all of our kids clung to Mom like I didn't exist. I think the best support I was able to give was trying to separate Mom from the babies just to give her a moment of peace. Changing a couple of diapers, cleaning up after they spit up all over. Those are the things I could do. Although I did feel like I won a contest each time I'd feed them and pass them off, and they would spit up on Maya immediately after. She didn't find it nearly as amusing. After each new child, I had to unlearn the idea that the baby is Mom's responsibility. Mom doesn't need a cheerleader, she needs a partner. Dads can do what moms can do. With today's stresses and challenges, stereotypical gender roles are no longer a viable shield for us.
Indeed. Good to hear from Mr. Kataya sharing that very interesting experience there. So we want to just mention that this is Family Time, live on Love 101 FM, YouTube, and Facebook. It's produced by Family Life Ministries. For our social media interaction, we want fathers to respond to this question. Before the baby arrived, how did you picture your role in those first weeks at home? And how did that compare to what actually happened? Let us know via WhatsApp, text, and voice notes at 876-997-3125. Please try to keep those voice notes to no longer than 30 seconds. And you can also call our studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328. You can also watch us and comment live on Love 101 FM Facebook and Love 101 FM YouTube. We want to hear from you. We'll be right back.
On the next mailbox, we'll be staying on track with the topic Steaming Ahead Part 2. Imagine starting your high school journey with an avalanche of financial challenges. These financial problems cause you not to have a roof over your head at times, along with a poor school attendance record and low academic results for almost 3 years. You are invited to continue the conversation with our special guest, Mr. Eric Cunningham, second-year physics student at the Michael University College. as he shares more about his divine transformation, graduating with 16.
Jamaica live good, yeah. I make we enjoy life, what we feel safe at night. Jamaica live good.
Jamaica, stop the killing and give up the guns. Just live good now.
The time brought to you by the Ministry of National Security and Peace is
6 o'clock.
You can see the face, but not the heart. Those who want to do you wrong. So many times.
Bless up. This is Christopher Martin. Human trafficking is a crime. Let's unite to end human trafficking. Be wise, open your eyes. Spot them, stop them, and report them.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
No shadow at the dark. No shadow at the dark.
Welcome back to you, our listeners. You are tuned to Love 101. This is Family Time, brought to you by Family Life Ministries. Family Life Ministries provides counseling for people with all kinds of challenges from all walks of life. Let's get a word from Reverend Mike at this time with Word to Flesh Moments with Reverend Mike.
Ephesians 4:2 reminds us that with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bear with one another in love. This should be the capstone scripture for any man whose spouse is going through fourth trimester trauma. I recently asked a mother, what's the most important thing a husband can do for a wife in her fourth trimester? Her answer was simple: be empathetic. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, resulting in helpful actions which support the person needing empathy. A man needs divine help to choose to be consistently empathetic, while his wife exhibits the confusing and sometimes ridiculous behaviors associated with postpartum blues. A songwriter wrote, "Change my heart, O God, make it ever true. Change my heart, O God, may I be like you." Her angry words must be met with a soft answer during that time. Her depression and low feelings must be met with care and uplifting feelings during her postpartum blues. Her confusion and frustration must be met with clarity and loving intervention while she's going through this awful time. Psalm 46 reminds us, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. But you must also choose to obey Ephesians 4:2 while depending on God's divine help. I'm Reverend Mike from Fellowship Tabernacle, and we just had a WTF moment.
Thanks for sharing, Reverend Mike, but thanks for sharing those insightful and godly tips. Because, of course, we have so far realized that the period after the baby arrives can really put a lot of strain on relationships.
Yes, certainly do. Certainly do. So we are continuing our discussion, and we have Dr. Ramos, Dr. Kataya, and we have our behavioral therapist, Mr. Charles, who will help us to unpack these other questions in this segment. So what communication challenges tend to show up most during this time? I recall a friend of mine saying that his spouse was not or didn't think he was compassionate when he was adamant that, she should breastfeed the baby. And she was expressing that it's an uncomfortable situation as the baby is trying to latch and it's uncomfortable, so there can be some communication challenges there when mother is feeling one thing, the father is interpreting one thing another way. But we want to hear from you, Mr. Charles, the behavioral therapist, about what communication challenges tend to show up during this time.
What definitely stands out in this trimester would be a clash of beliefs, a clash of expectations, and original family culture. I continue to see, not speaking from a personal experience this time, but I continue to see that in this time, the very deep beliefs, the deep set beliefs that we have towards parenting, they tend to come out most during this time, particularly when decisions about what is going to happen to the child, how that's going to come up. And now I could step in. I was raised in I'm an only child. And so I remember we had a very interesting experience when my mom came to lend some support in that fourth trimester. She came to do her duties, and in that time, I mean, she had her beliefs about what should happen, and of course, she would tell them to me. And sometimes I do admit that some of those beliefs would slip through the filter, and then I would communicate them to my wife as though they were my beliefs. But then having to be reminded that this is my wife's child and this is my mom's grandchild. And so at that time, nobody could tell my mom how to raise me. And so I had to respectfully communicate back to my mom that she can't tell my wife what to do or what is best for our child. And so I had to remember, I learned in that time that expectations, we tend to have a clash of expectations, and we tend to have a set of unspoken assumptions. My wife and I, we always joke that communication is our superpower, because before we got married, all we had was communication because we was long distance. And so our communication was very, very strong. However, when we became parents, we saw that superpower was tested because parenting dug up some of those deep set beliefs that we had, even never being parents ourselves, but some of those deep seeds that were planted about what is best and how to raise a family and what to do for a child, and if a child should be that being breastfed is best fed and so on. Those initial moments were really difficult because our personal culture, our family cultures were clashing, and so we had to remember that we were on the same team. So we had to work very hard to make our communication aligned so that our messaging could be the same and that we could present a united front to our parenting journey.
Right. Thanks for sharing, Mr. Charles. And we understand that it's important for you to communicate. And so we have another quick question, how can couples talk about exhaustion, emotions, and unmet needs during the postpartum period without falling into a blame game or guilt or anything like that? Because I know one of the things that came to mind, which I've heard from mothers before, that sometimes men, for example, may feel a little abandoned, or there is probably some attention shift because the child is not in the picture. So I'd love to get a balanced response coming from Dr. Ramos. Love to hear from you regarding this question.
Yeah.
And so on, attention issues, etc.
I must say that when I've been taking care of postpartum patients for 25 years. And the moment I open the door, I can already sense in the air whether or not there's a positive vibe in that room or there's frustration and communication in that room. And I must say, the best partners that I've seen really, really look their partners in the eye and, just are there for them in the ways that the partners have known, in terms of like in touch or verbally or both, or is it, just even as simple as putting their table closer to them and giving them water. I see those little things that they do. I always see it as cherishing. And so when I go in a room that's positive and there's communication happening, it's because the partner cherishes their wife, their partner, the parent so much, and there's cherishing that happens between the two. And it's so lovely to see. And even if there's frustration or there's miscommunication, at the end of it all, when I see a partner cherishing the other, there's just this lovely communication and airing out a frustration. But then at the end of the day, it is this cherishing that happens. It's, there's love, but there's also, again, this that they cherish that moment together.
Thank you very much
Okay.
for sharing, Dr. Raymond.
Yes.
It's the little things that counts, definitely.
Yes. Could we have here a YouTube comment? Could we have that displayed so we can see what that YouTube comment is, so we can read that to our listeners? Actually, it's 2 YouTube comments, so we'd like to share that with the listeners. So it says here, excellent, Sir Charles. We need a man training college with professors like you teaching Jamaican males how to love their wives, especially in the 4th trimester. Yes, big deal, big deal. The men certainly do need some help there. Jamaican men know nothing about being there and being consistent after baby comes home. We as ladies are on our own, aside from aunts, moms who are there to assist. Dr. Charles, well, I'm giving you a title here, Dr. Charles. Perhaps this is something that you should consider. But anyway, you mentioned about not shaming those men who are unable to be there throughout the days and at every appointment and so on. And so we want some of our listeners, some of our men to know that we understand you work on a site, you're busy, you have to be at work. You come home, you're exhausted and so on. We understand. But where you can adjust to help mommy, because after all, both of you are pregnant. It's not only the mother, right? So if you can make some adjustments, we encourage you to do so. But there's no shame if you're unable to give your full support physically at all the times and instances that you may be needed. But we thank God for community, relatives, and support, as was said in that YouTube comment. So we're going to go to a clip. Is this a clip that we have here? We're going to go to...
when our baby was finally returned to us from the hospital, from the nursery, I had to now take the time to adjust to this tiny little baby. I was nervous. I was fearful of even holding her because she would fall or maybe hurt some part of her body. A very tender, very gentle little child. And so my wife was very aware of my own feelings. She herself was very cautious because we had this little tiny baby that we had to be nursing and taking care of. And as a father, for the first time in my life, being a father, it was not an easy thing. But I'm thankful that my wife and myself were able to work together through it. And by God's grace, we came out and were able to serve as good parents, I think, to our little baby.
Okay. Awesome. We thank Donald Stewart there again, sharing another part of his experience as a dad. Of course, we did say this was a daddy chronicles of the fourth trimester. We're heading into our final break. This is Family Time Live on Love 101 FM, YouTube, and Facebook. It's produced by Family Life Ministries for our feedback. Before the baby arrived, how did you picture your role in those first weeks at home, and how did that compare to what actually happened? Send your stories via WhatsApp and text voice notes to 876-997-3125. Try to keep those voice notes to no longer than 30 seconds. Call our studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328. You can also watch us and comment live on Love 101 Facebook and Love 101 YouTube. We want to hear from you. Don't go anywhere. This is Family Time.
Following the passage of Hurricane Melissa, Jamaicans are urged to take precautions to prevent leptospirosis, a disease spread through contact with water, soil, or food contaminated by the urine of infected animals. Remember, avoid swimming, wading, or playing in floodwaters or any water that may have resulted from flooding. Avoid consuming food that may have been contaminated with floodwater or animal urine. Wear protective clothing and footwear when working or walking in areas that may be contaminated. And visit the nearest health center immediately if you experience fever, chills, muscle pain, or other flu-like symptoms. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Welcome back. You are tuned to Love 101. This is Family Time, brought to you by Family Life Ministries, FLM. FLM provides counseling for people with all kinds of challenges from all walks of life. Remember, you can tune in to the program via the Love 101 Facebook page and YouTube channel. And welcome back to our discussion on the fourth trimester, when support becomes real, the Father Chronicles. Still here to help us through this part of the program, we have Dr. Maya Clark-Kataya, clinician, inaugural Evelyn Lauder Associate Dean for Nurse Practitioner Programs, and professor at the Hunter Bellevue School of Nursing, CUNY, health equity advocate. She's also a health equity advocate. And we also have Dr. Jamil Nagtanon Ramos, who is a women's health clinician, assistant professor, School of Nursing at Rutgers University, and advocate. And new to the Family Time family, we have Delison Charles, who is a behavioral therapist and a new dad. So we want to welcome everybody back. We do have a question though, which is, how can fathers show up in ways that truly support mothers after the baby arrives? But I think we pretty much touched on some of that, so we can probably zone in a little bit more to ask, from a clinical standpoint, what guidance do you wish partners were given more consistently during postpartum care? So maybe we can ask that question to Dr. Kataya, or direct that question to Dr. Kataya. I don't know if you want me to repeat the question.
No, I heard you. You were saying what we wish clinicians and providers asked for from the beginning. I think it's really what we talked about today, which is having a conversation about expectations and needs. You know, Mr. Charles said the same thing that Dr. Ramos and I said, which is none of us know. We literally have no idea. We are walking blind. But at least if you can come to an agreement that you're cooking meals, you're grocery shopping, you're doing the cleaning, you're washing the laundry, having that conversation and recognizing that both of you are going to be going through a variety of things and may not be fully prepared. How you're going to, get through disagreements. What if you have a thought that your partner doesn't have? Really sitting down and having that conversation ahead of time. I think I wish a clinician had told me that. Also, I wish a clinician had told me it's okay. It's okay if you don't breastfeed. It's okay if you want to use formula. It's okay if you don't use, if you use disposable diapers. It's okay if you don't. I wish someone just told me it was okay to live. Just survive. However it is that you and your partner have agreed to raise your child. I wish that someone had told me that.
Right. Anything else you want to add, or anyone else want to add?
I 100% agree with Dr. Kataya. At that point, you're just surviving, and also it's okay to feel that joy. I want to just say that too, and to kind of sit and feel the joy of having a new baby, and be able to share that joy with your partner is also another. Sometimes it's kind of put aside because there's so many things in front of you. You're in pain, you're frustrated, you're all of these things. But really having reserved some time for joy and actually feeling that is so important too.
Thanks so much for sharing. Thank you. So, earlier, one of our listeners expressed that, our Jamaican men need
support in understanding how to navigate, after in the fourth trimester, life in the fourth trimester. And someone else said, they need teaching, but there are many Jamaican men who have been supporting their wives and their spouses
And doing a pretty
and
good
doing
job,
a
I
pretty
think.
good job. And we want to really acknowledge those men. But in mentioning that, we may want to think that it's a cultural thing, and that some men may have the perspective that women should be, homemakers, they should be doing the washing, the cleaning,
Nurturing.
and the nurturing, so they should be hands off. How can we tackle that perspective, that cultural expectations that often frame that caregiving is only a woman's job? How can we tackle that? And I think perhaps Dr. Charles, you can answer that, being the behavioral therapist.
Yeah, I like the fact that we were able to clean that up a bit because, thinking about it, the same would exist. I live in Barbados, but I am, of course, of Trinidadian heritage. So having experience and working in both of these islands, I understand that it's the same phenomenon that exists throughout the island. So it's not necessarily strictly a cultural thing, but I realize that it really does come down to individual preparation and individual showing up, how you show up as a man. When working with men, which happens to be my niche, I realize that in some cases men don't do because they don't know how to. In some cases, men don't do because they're not ready to. And in some cases, men don't do because they're unwilling to. And so it's very important to, particularly when we are assessing men and how we show up in these spaces and with these new roles, it's important to kind of discern which one are we dealing with. Am I dealing with a man who does not know how to? And so I can show some grace and point him maybe in the direction where he can be informed. Am I dealing with a man who's not ready to? So maybe what he needs is some encouragement and some support, coming back from life or the woman that he's trying to support. But then if we are dealing with somebody who is unwilling to, then that's a whole different story that I know we don't have the time to unpack. But it is true. There are some of us men, we have done the individual work, and so we are showing up more empathetically, more mindfully, conscientiously towards our women in our lives. And then there are some men who are locked with traditional conditioning, who believe that thing that's associated with it, it's a woman thing, not understanding that if it were not for the man, this child could not come into the picture. And so I would encourage my brothers to be more mindful and to be more empathetic, especially with our wives, with our partners who have now gone through a physical change. I mean, pregnancy, if we become very objective about it, pregnancy, labor, it's traumatic to the body, and particularly when women have to transition from, traditional laboring and going then into emergency sections and so on. It really does take a toll on them psychologically. And so I do encourage my brothers to become more informed so that we can show up into this space more empathetic and more attentive. Yeah.
Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you so very much for responding the way you have, Dr. Charles, encouraging our men there to be more empathetic and, to adjust. At this time, we are going to share another clip from Pastor Christopher Bravo.
I recall in the fourth trimester when I was having my first child, my wife and I did expect that I would be called on much more, and I intended to show support. What I didn't figure is the extent to which I had to be present. I did perceive that I'd have to support my wife in her recovery and support, the baby. But when it happened, the every 2 hours, participating in feeding, and then the changing of pampers, and sitting up to burp the baby, and those things, sometimes it's
All right, that was Pastor Christopher Broadway there, sharing his experience. Now, I have a question just before, as we're heading into the final leg of the program. At what point should families consider bringing in outside support like counseling or mental health care? Because I mean, there's so much that can be said, and so much that has not been properly unpacked, I believe, and
Right.
you know,
Postpartum depression.
postpartum depression and other physical challenges that can follow after you've given birth and even weeks after certain things surface. You know, at what point should external help be sought? I throw that out to any one of you who feel that you are able to adequately respond to that.
I think any kind of transition in life, I'm a big advocate for therapy. Mental health therapy, I always say physical, even physical therapy. Anyone who's had a baby, I think should get physical therapy or pelvic physical therapy. As we take care of our physical body, taking care of our mental health and spiritual health is also very important. So any type of transition, I'm a full advocate for that. Even if it's again just sharing the joy and sharing having a completely different perspective than you and your spouse, because you can be in your own little bubble. So it's nice to have just another person that would be able to provide counsel.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so very much for responding. Listeners, here is food for thought. Support becomes real when presence replaces pressure. Support becomes real when presence replaces pressure. Thanks for being here with us. We hope today's conversation helps in shaping you and your homes. If you have questions of a personal nature or are concerned about a friend or family member, we implore you to make contact with us. That's FLM. For more information on our services or for our counselors in Kingston and other parts of the island, contact our head office at 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. Or also 876-579-8690 and 876-279-8678. The last two numbers are also WhatsApp enabled. Note that the appointments and for appointments and information on costs, you must call the offices. Otherwise, to keep up to date with what's happening with FLM and our programs, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries-FLMJA, and on Instagram at simply FLMJA.
And before we leave you, here's our verse for this evening. 1 John 3, verse 18, the NIV. Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. So I'm just going to quickly repeat. Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Thanks to our special guests, Dr. Maya Clark-Kutaya, Dr. Jamil Nagtalon Ramos, and Mr. Delson Charles. We also want to thank Rashid Perry for assisting with research and resource support. And we want to thank our show producer, Kathy Gale, and Derval Graham for piloting us through this hour. And of course, you, our valuable listeners. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Crystal.
Have a blessed rest of the week. Thanks for being with us.
Tuesday, February 3,